They could be, yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and, like I said, I want to give you guys freedom to do what works at your campus. Jordan is experimenting with something, and can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, we're just running a weekly ministry, Sundays 4 to 6. What we would see on Thursday nights, we used to run everything just through Thursday night small group. And we would see big dips based on what season it is, whether it's football season, track season, really caused a lot of people to be pretty inconsistent. Had two different routes we could have gone. We could have gone
No.
small group, or we could have gone programming more so. And so we went a weekly ministry on Sundays, so it kind of looks a lot like a rally, or what we would call a rally, which is front end's pretty open. We have worship. We have, I wouldn't say a message. We have a concept that's driven
I got you. Thank you.
out, and then it's fleshed out in small groups. So that's what we do right now. We're getting ready to do a couple events once our budget year comes around. I have some more money in my budget to grow it, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, what's up, Jason?
Can you say that again, like what you do for Sunday? You just,
Yep, yeah, it's 4 to 6. Probably the first 30 to 45 minutes is like a hangout time. We'll play some games, hang out, music going in the lobby. You know, our space is a little different than some of your guys's. And so we like pack them, kind of cram them in, create a lot of energy in our lobby area, head upstairs. We got 2 people that are on main stage that lead worship for us every week, and so that's been really good. We'll like
acoustic or like
right now we're doing acoustic sets and stuff. We're working on some in-ear, so we can possibly go beyond that in the future. And we'll kind of have a message, but more like a concept. And we'll kind of approach them with a concept, and then allow them to like flesh that thing out in their small groups, rather than it being like this big hoorah. And like once or twice a month, I try to have not me speak. And so like a couple weeks back, we had a relationships panel, and so we had like Alex on there. We had 2 of our worship leaders on there, like just different people to start a conversation, rather than like tell them like this is it, like start a conversation on it, and they can carry that out within their small groups. And so that's kind of the goal, is not to, I don't know, to allow them to connect with their leaders and like talk about a topic on their pace, on their level. So yeah, that's all I'm doing.
do you enjoy it?
I'm doing probably triple the work that I did in the past. I think it is the best thing I've done. I'm all for it. I love it because I get to spend time with my kids weekly, interact with them. And sometimes it's like very structured, but a lot of times it's not structured at all. And so like we'll have kids stay like up to 2 hours late on a 2-hour event just to hang out. And so, in my opinion, like if kids are hanging out afterwards where they want to interact with you, that's a huge win. We'll see what the growth says. Like it's still early. It's too early to determine if it's been like super successful or not successful. We haven't done enough outreachy type things that we've done in the past to do it because of budget stuff. But we're getting into the new budget year, which will allow me to do some different things. So we'll see what growth says. But I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. If you're enjoying it, I'm learning that I do things that I don't typically enjoy, whether it's an event. I don't do it. It's just business you go. It's good. Good job, bud.
Yeah, that relationship board thing is awesome, man.
So Jordan, is that like a 80-20 night, or is it a 100% night, or?
So I think that really depends on how you view numbers. Like, are they people that are believers? Are they people that hang around our church? Are they, you know, I mean, I think there's a lot of people in our church that maybe go to our church that aren't saved. And so like I think like people that have like committed relationships with Jesus Christ, I think there's probably 60% of that. And I think there's 40% which I would consider outreach or searching. if that makes sense. Because I think it's really easy to say, well, are they outreach, meaning have we never seen them before? Some of these kids I've seen before, some of them like have been brand new that have just come on Sunday nights, which has been a cool thing too. So I think it kind of.
As far as the teaching and all that is, what?
Like I said, most of those are concepts. So like, we'll start a concept and then allow them to flesh it out. So like we had 3 weeks on relationships and we played it through like a remote, like play, pause, stop, rewind, and like start a concept, like share a concept with them and then allow them to shell out.
Are you creating your own material?
Of course I am.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good. So if you remember back, part of the thing is with the youth group and being isolated from church, one of the things I talked with Jordan about is we need to keep an eye, always be pointing them to the church and getting involved in service, and also making sure that the students are going to service are not stopping going to service and starting going to this. So that's just a few things that we're kind of watching out for. Other thoughts, ideas?
Have you feel like there's a lot more energy? Like, do you feel like the parents are more energetic about what you're doing, or the students themselves, or those who are in your core, like how do they feel?
Yeah, I mean, start with parents. I think something like this appeals to parents as long as they don't have to travel. Like one thing that we have going, not against us, it's obviously a big plus, is we pull from Monroe City, Palmyra, Mexico, Missouri, Vandalia, Bowling Green. Like we pull from all over. And so I would say there's mixed reactions. I think most parents love the programming aspect. I think it speaks to them, but that really, in my opinion, doesn't matter as much if the kids aren't behind it. But I think the parents are more pro this than they were the other. I think the one thing that a couple parents just don't like driving, but again, like you go to church in Hannibal, you would have driven out on a Thursday night, so this really isn't any different, but had a little bit on that. Kids, I definitely think the kids that are coming are way more like you. I've seen kids go from spotty attenders to every weekers, which, like, to me, that's a big plus. So, like, the kids that are in, I think, are pretty much all in at this point. The question is, how well can you streamline kids that are brand new, their first time coming, into it. So that's been yet to be seen. We've had some really good success. Like, we've had some kids come from Palmyra that we've never seen before that came 4 weeks in a row, So another big factor is like our senior class that graduated out. Obviously, it was a strong class, and so like we have like 2 seniors. So that's kind of you would love for that to be different. That was kind of in that transition period of the 7 months without a guy. That kind of sucks, but it is what it is. But even those people are way more consistent. They've brought their friends, that's a huge win for some of those kids. Like, that's a big step of improvement for somebody that didn't used to attend regularly to bring their friends. So.
Let me ask you guys a question. Part of the mission of Fuse, obviously, is twofold: few students with Christ, few students with the church. You feel that we are doing a good job preparing students for auditorium. I had a small class of 8th graders move up, and so most of the ones that I had coming are still, like, they're going to church. This next year I'll have a much bigger class go up with a lot more spotty people, and so I guess I'm kind of concerned that they're going to struggle with the transition of like, hey, this is a lot less interactive, hey, like, the sermon's not 15 minutes, hey, like, so would love to hear your guys' thoughts.
I'm starting to see more high school students wanting to serve in kids areas than be in church. Like, and just recently, like last 2 weeks, I've been sitting there like, I wonder how much I wanna push that. Like, how much do I wanna require them to be in service versus, helping out. And they're not ones, right now, they're not ones that are necessarily, just sitting there, like they're a blessing to have, help out. So I don't wanna sit there and be like, well, they're a blessing to have, so it's great. But I also talk to the parents, like, why, are they ever in church? And, because I'm only ever in church, I'm on church one service. The other two, you get a lot of students that come in there and they said, no, they're not. And I was like, why is it? And they're like, I don't know. But they love to serve. They love being with few students or kids, crossing kids or early childhood. So I don't know what the difference is there. So I struggle when my 8th graders go up and then they have to just be in church. They kind of feel disconnected, so I keep a lot of them last 2 years and Fuse helping there, and that's kind of like what's kept them. And then maybe they go into church every now and then. I'm starting to see that more.
And another question. Do you make your high school leaders attend church? Like, will you tell them, like, hey, if you want to serve, like, you have to be attending church? I'm just curious if that's what everyone does.
Are we doing okay, guys?
Sure.
NCT? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in the past, when we first launched Fuse 4 years ago or 5, however long ago it was, our intention was to fuse with the church. It was also part of the transition. It kind of had to be this way. Was exposure to the main auditorium and incorporating elements of the main auditorium into Fuse, such as baptism videos, preaching of baptism, communion, and explain how to take communion and why we take communion. And then we would, like once every 6 weeks, actually go into main auditorium for part of it. But I think we've learned it's probably not the most effective way with middle school students. I think probably what would be the best for transition is us being a little bit more proactive in taking those 8th graders throughout their year of 8th grade with their small group leader and incorporating them with elements of big service. And why we do that, and do a little bit more in-depth teaching with the 8th graders. But I know in your model, you use 8th graders to lead in Fuse, which makes it a little bit more difficult to do that.
Yeah.
But it might have to take place during small group time. Because that's how you keep your 8th graders engaged in Fuse and have them serve and lead.
And they go from being able to lead in a service to not, like in your model, which sucks.
Unless they view leading as serving, which is just a teaching moment for a student. Going in from being on stage leading worship, or going and getting communion, or doing this and help on chairs to go into the whole Greek door, I think feels a little different. It is a big difference in support.
You're welcome.
One of the biggest things I've seen with my students this year, and it came out this year, and I think it's always been there, but they go to camp and they experience God, and they come back to church the following week, they go, I want what camp gives me. I want the same worship experience, I want the same application. And honestly, I mean, I know from boys as leading the guys small group, all my guys, and I would probably imagine all the girls would say the same thing, but they all say, Jerry doesn't relate to me. Jerry doesn't talk to me, he talks to my parents.
Right.
So the past couple of weeks, one of the things I would like to try is after summer, I really thought a lot about atmosphere. And for my students, creating an atmosphere and capitalizing on Sunday, all day Sunday. So what I'd like to try is Sunday during church, create an atmosphere for students where we're building that community. We're watching the sermon together, integrating them a little bit slower than 8th grade, doing it all through high school. An idea that we came up with was potentially we have a student room. So what if we do what the idea was with Fuse at times was going in for worship, coming out to watch Jerry's sermon in our student room. We in a sense do maybe a small devo after Jerry's sermon and then go back into the sermon for response time and doing all that type of stuff. I'm not a big fan of the transitions there, but what I really like about that is it's creating an atmosphere that my students now are gonna wanna come to church to be with us, hanging out, that type of stuff. Then we go into the next service and we all go in serving together, which all of my students are really good at serving because they don't wanna go to church. And then we come back that night for a small group. And all of that is really like, I tell them, Jerry speaks to you. We just have to do a better job, I think, relating it to them. So having like maybe an atmosphere like this, we can go, this is what Jerry just said, and this is how it relates to you, type of thing. So they're getting the teaching, but it's creating an inviting atmosphere that we do not have at Keokuk for students, Sunday morning.
Some junior high students like are still struggling with like taking abstract concepts, right? Like if you think about the development of a brain. So like, you're exactly right. Like Jerry's message can be applied to everybody, but like you have to like break it down and apply it directly. Like we do transitions in Hannibal every single week. We go up into worship, we come out, we have a message. I mean, it's not Jerry's message, you know, clarify it's XP3. And then we go back in and we respond. I'll tell you, like, that's a rough, like, I do not wish that on anyone. Just so you know, like, you can do it. Like, I think Macomb's done it in the past when they had it in the conference room. I think different people have tried it and experimented. It's a lot of moving, changing environments, a lot of different changes for kids. And especially if you're talking about not disrupting what's going on in service and doing what's best for the kids. Like, that's just a great question, though. Like, is that going to do more for the kids in the long term doing that than the other?
Yeah, and we tried that with Fuse, and it literally killed our Fuse ministry when we tried going in for main service, like literally down to 2 students in Fuse. And so like as my wife and I were talking about it, we're like, all right, it didn't work with middle school, but could it be better than all of them saying they're not getting anything out of service?
It'd be cool to have your cafeteria atmosphere with just drinks and chips, whatever, sit around listening.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be too open and distracting maybe down there, I don't know,
But I think we can bring that into that student room.
to that room. Mhm, yeah, you can.
When the Sunday after camp, we went back and had breakfast ready for the students, like they were dead tired. We all went to service together, and they would say they got nothing out of that service, but they all brought energy that I've never seen out of our high school ministry. And ever since then, I was just like, man, how can I create that on a weekly, like Sunday morning, students were recognized in our church that Sunday because there was energy from us. And I'm like, that's what I want to create on a weekly basis.
That was right after camp, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, something, yeah, using camp to kick off something like you're talking about would be pretty huge, I think.
I have a sacrilegious question. How important is the worship element in Fuse? I mean, transitional, I get that, but who here beside, I mean, how's worship in Fuse for you all?
Took a bunch of you to Hannibal, you know, at one time, and you saw that they were extremely engaged. And it's every end of the spectrum there.
But they
so-
went into service, right?
No,
He's talking Wednesday night.
Oh.
Worship at 48th Fuse that's one of the things that I've focused on a lot since starting, is just the consistency with that. And I think we're starting to see the fruits of that, and I would say worship culture is getting significantly better to where I'm seeing responses on a regular basis. I'm seeing kids engage in worship on a regular basis, which is cool. And I think some of that's that I have a lot of 8th graders in on the worship, like doing worship, so.
We find that in our little living room there, when we do songs like, dang it, is it Real Love? That kind of have a breakdown part, thinking, well, this beginning of the summer, I just started jumping around with them, said, hey, this is what we're gonna do, so then at camp, when the song comes on, we'd converge was the dream. Well, they started doing that the last day of camp, but we just kind of jump around in that room, kind of like a little mosh pit, and those songs the kids really love, and we just did this last week, did the Fortnite video thing. I didn't know how that was gonna go, but they all really liked it. There's like, I think 15 in that room, and they all were engaged with the Fortnite thing, and then we transitioned to worship, and we had jumpy songs. But now when we do like a slower song, they don't really know how to respond. So like at the end of the sermon, like we wrap it up, we do a response, hey, this is time to respond, and just we give them a question, something to think about. They kind of sing, kind of don't. But we started jumping around during those breaks, and the students really, they get into that and they're tired. But if we don't have songs that allow a spot where they can just release, jump, then it's just kind of fuddy-duddy. Like every beat seems like it'd be a really good one, but they haven't gotten into that yet. But one day they can just jump, because we do as leaders, we just jump around and just keep pushing them in circles and get them off the wall, and then the little ones eventually fall over. They all laugh and have fun, but I used to be more on the spectrum, like, hey, take this serious, and kids would like doing dances in the back, and I'm just like, don't, just let them have fun, and they're gonna be goofballs, so that's what I do now, and that's been good, but I have to have upbeat songs right away, so.
Yeah, you guys know what songs your students respond to. If you want to build a culture, you gotta pick those songs and use them. If they're not responding to them, don't. Just set it aside. Now, if you have a couple of really good engaging songs, and then one that they haven't been and you want them to, do the two good engaging where they're going, and then slip in the one where they're not so much, and that energy might pull into that next song, and it becomes a song that they respond to.
I've been pretty intentional to use songs that they do in kids ministry, at least for the first bit here, and then kind of reintroduce Fuse ones that we've been doing for a while.
On the strategy side of things, are you guys aware of any youth ministry that's thriving in your community?
No. That's what I was saying earlier, so the conversation. No.
Like, is there anything in hand what you feel like is thriving?
I don't think anything is above what we do. I think there's probably one that's on the same level, but it's like, it's not what we, like, it's not our style, it's not what we have to offer. It's because, again, you gotta think through like the lens, okay? So like when you're talking like a Clover Road or some of those churches, like you gotta think through like, those are parents that'll make their kids go to everything anyways. And so like when you're viewing it that way, like I don't even think numbers wise, I think it's not on the same spectrum.
There's a church in Springfield that I looked at a little bit, because they had like 200 students at CIY or at some.
Oh, mixed.
Yeah. And, yeah, they have several hundred students in their thing, and it's a big splash, and it's exciting, because you got all the numbers. But when I ran percentages, had better percentages than they had. So I don't know that there's anything that, I was gonna go over and kind of see and pick the brain a little bit, because I thought they were like, but, I mean, they're getting it done in their community. I mean, it's, you don't find that very often these days, 200 or 300 kids.
That's one thing, when I think strategy, the one thing that really look at across the nation in student ministry world, like, man, what is thriving and what are those, how are they reaching those communities? And from what I see, the ministries that are thriving are the churches that are thriving as far as when it comes to New Spring or Elevation or Point. I think they kind of operate on a different caliber than most churches in America. But I know, like, in Quincy, I've watched almost every student ministry. I wouldn't say that any of them were actually ever thriving. There was one that was doing well, but then he left, so that's imploded. And say Madison Park would be the next closest thing, but I don't think they're like running super.
Right.
They run a weekly Sunday deal, and it's not like thriving.
Wednesday nights, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I think Bethel on 12th and Jefferson, they got a strong Wednesday night kids stuff.
Like younger kids.
Yeah, but not high school. High's got a lot of carryover with them.
Keep it. So that's where I was just kind of intriguing there. Just
Right.
searching, you know.
Well, in our model, I mean, when you think of a big thriving, when you're in small groups, I mean, the students don't experience that, and outsiders coming in, they can't experience, you know, the energy of numbers.
So it makes camp special, right?
There you go. Yeah, definitely.
I think it makes, because it's,
Yeah, time.
you can't, they can't leave.
Right.
Because I think of every
Exactly.
large group gathered in the school system. You talk about dances, you talk about sporting events. A lot of times, especially dances, students stay in their small groups until, as they say, most of the kids go late and leave early at the school dance. At least in Quincy, every group I know.
Sure.
They go to there with their crew, they go to dinner, show up late, they're at the dance for a little bit, just to justify all the money they spent, and then they go to their party afterwards. And then even it's true with like sporting events, if you look at student sections, it's pretty lame sometimes when you look at them, at least. But I'd say that we have a good sports atmosphere at QHS. The student section oftentimes is pretty lackadaisical. And look at other big, large group events that students participate in. I just don't see them being drawn to that as much, which, I don't know, kind of look at it from the culture perspective as well. There's obvious value in it, that's why we love camp. That's why we.
I think we're barreling as just a whole church entity, and we're barreling to some hard conversation about what it is we do, what our processes are, and just in general, I mean, I agree with you. I'm searching the same thing. I'm doing it in our community. I'm looking around and I'm seeing that what worked whenever I was in high school is not even coming close to working right now. It's not a strategy for whatever reason. And I think it'd be really wise for us to try to figure out what's the next thing, and let's try to get in front of it. Yep. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement.
To me, we haven't even really asked the question we should ask yet, and that is how can we minister to this generation? Because, you know, the way we've been thinking is what programs can we do at church and stuff, but it's like, what are the needs out there and how can we meet those needs. We're thinking way too traditional, just in programming strategy.
I just think you go to them. Like, I mean, I think ultimately that's the biggest win. I think it shows, like, it should, but can you do that as one person? Can you do that on our budget? Can you, like, they said it at Warren, they're like, love a lot of times spelled like time.
Yeah.
Like, and so like the more time you can spend with them, like that's why camp is so powerful. It's because we get them for more time in one weekend than we get them an entire year. Like that's why they go deep. Like how can we meet them? But like we can't, one person can't meet them everywhere. Like our small group leaders need to do that, but they also have families. They also have this. They have other things going on. So like, but how do you do that more? And so like creating open cultures like Josh, like where like kids can come in and out and like. Be a part of that on a regular, or going into the schools, which again, like different people, different places do it. Like I think meeting them where they're at, like is always the win, but like that also doesn't show up on our numbers. Like that doesn't affect our budgets. That doesn't. I mean, I'm just being real. Like, you know, Andre's Funch, which again is a different context, different culture. It's one. He's got one lunch period, which is awesome. Like it's a great thing, but like that's a win. Like, I think that matters to students. Like, I really do. And so, like, how can we go and meet them where they're at rather than saying, come here to this programming? So, like, again, that's why we have a 2-hour slot. And, like, more of it is, like, the goal is to, like, just spend time with kids, like, period. That's why I moved to that model, not anything else. It's like,
A lot of value in community.
No, there is a ton of it. I mean, if their
And
students enjoy being there, that's great. I'm just thinking of, like, so everything we do as a church now is a reaction from the very beginning. So the model was never a program, the model was discipleship. It was each one teach one. And it was each one bring someone with you. And we still do that, but I would say that at least now in our world, I feel like people would view discipleship as like a person who could be discipling somebody doesn't because the church does that. And so we've reacted from the start of the church to here now. And I think we're hitting a culture that like, they're starting to buck up against that. Like they're starting to say, like this is this very, what's the right word, disingenuous. Like if it's not done well, it could come across that way, although I think, and I have said too, that time is the deal. Like if that's an overnight retreat, if that's camp, if that's, but yeah, I mean, I just don't think that, I think that, yeah, I think that it's a good conversation to keep having.
I know when I vision cast to my parents and my leaders when I talk about the value of student ministry is I feel why I love small groups is because I feel like I can offer what I believe is the most important to a student, which is a genuine relationship with a caring adult. That's going to point them to Christ in the midst of conversation, but also through the turmoils in their life. I kind of, when I talk to families, I oftentimes ask, like, how often do you have a family dinner? And a lot of times they're like, oh, we're just too busy. And that's how our cultures move. Our culture's so busy with the expectation we put on students and families that the valuable time families spend together is diminishing. I talk about sitcoms, and when you look at sitcoms, most sitcoms used to be centered around a family dinner table, or there had elements where they would all come together and talk about this stuff, but you rarely see that now, as far as family dinners and the value of family in our culture of America. And that's where I don't feel like we can compete on a programming side or entertainment side or anything like that when it comes to high school students. They can get better entertainment, they can get better all this stuff within seconds on their phone. And that's where, in small group, I can put them in a relationship with an adult that they're not going to find through their smartphone. They're not going to necessarily find except unless they have a great teacher at school, which those are the teachers that all the kids love for someone that they feel like actually care for them. And so that's where I talk about how valuable it is for our high school small groups. Like you're offering something to a high school student that they can't get anywhere else in this world. And I truly feel that's probably what students need the most, is a relationship with a caring adult that's gonna help guide them and show them Christ in every aspect and avenue of their life. So that's, and I know I've told you guys this before, but we just graduated our senior small group last year. And several of the students, who told us, we've had more family dinners around your table than we did our own table at home. And that's me seeing them once a week, and if we had a meal that week, and if they showed up that week. And they're saying like, hey, in the last 4 years, I had more family meals with you than I did my own family. Which shows you the value of being in a home. Where I kind of feel, why my students love it so much is because I can give them something they can't find anywhere else.
I think it's important for the small group leaders to view it as not, hey, I'm gonna do a small group lesson and that's it for the week. These are my kids that I'm discipling. That it's every day of the week. That I care about them and I want them to live for Jesus.
Being fresh out of high school, I would say that is one of the biggest things I wish I would have had throughout high school, is like one small group or once like connections with people that I would have had all throughout high school. Like I'm like Adam and Tressa, like I met them my end of my junior year, and like that's whenever I like really started getting back in church, and it's because of the relationships. And I said this earlier, and I said this in my internship or the develop video for this. I said it's our relationships that we build with other people that begin their relationship with Jesus Christ. And so it's like really, you have to be really intentional, I feel. And I like definitely in high school, I think having small groups is one of the best things. And going back into like the whole camp thing and trying to like how like people don't always want to come back because they don't have that camp like feeling, like the camp high. That's a big thing that if you guys could ever figure out, if we can figure out how to get to where they feel that at church every week, you're winning. So like that's a big thing I think also that would be awesome to figure out.
All right, small groups, great. Just figure out ways to get students plugged into small groups with outreach kind of things. Just, I like where we are and what we're doing. I just want to make sure that we're,
No, one amendment I want to add
okay.
is, when I look at Jordan's model, I do think you can accomplish the very same thing without caring adults.
Sure.
I think it has to, I love the aspect of a home, but I don't think that is lost in a larger group setting here. I think you can still find that same exact value and importance.
Yeah, you break down small
Well, they
groups.
split in this model too,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all about your focus. If you think the programming's what drives them there, you're wrong.
Right, you're right.
Like, it's all about the focus. And so like, our goal is shared experiences, right? Like, that's what we're talking about, shared experiences as a small group. We're doing a scavenger hunt, broken in small groups, dressed up all over. Like, that's the goal, is to get to a small group, get kids involved, so.
Cool. Just because of time, I want to shift gears. Let's talk about that event, and then we'll talk about the other event. Cool? Okay.
Encounter, you said?
Yeah.
Am I getting you guys